Tonight, we return to the lands between, a world of fading grace, ancient trees, and forgotten gods. It is a land shaped by war, ambition, and divine power, but hidden within its history is the story of a demigod very different from the others. A child who never grew, a dreamer who tried to create a gentler world, a quiet figure whose influence may be far greater than any blade or army. So settle in, let the world grow quiet around you, and allow the story to unfold slowly. Tonight, we explore the mystery of Miquella, among the many demigods born from Queen Marika. Each carried a destiny tied to power. Some became conquerors, others became warriors feared across the lands between. But one child followed a very different path. Miquella was born from the strange union of Marika and Raydegan, two divine beings who, in truth, are not entirely separate. From this unusual origin came two twins. One would become a legendary warrior. The other would remain forever a child. The twins carried curses from the moment of their birth. The sister was touched by the terrible power of scarlet rot, a spreading corruption tied to a distant outer god. It slowly consumed her body, threatening to destroy her from within. Yet the other twin carried a curse that was more subtle, but no less tragic. Miquella would never grow. The body remained eternally young, forever caught in childhood. In the lands between, butterflies are often associated with the demigods. Each butterfly represents a different divine child. One such creature is the nascent butterfly, small, pale, almost fragile. The word nascent means something newly born, something that has only just begun to exist. For Miquella, this meaning carries a quiet sadness, because the child remained forever in that beginning, always young, always filled with promise, but never allowed to reach adulthood. And yet, despite this curse, the young Empyrean possessed an extraordinary mind. Even as a child, Miquella demonstrated a deep understanding of the world. The Golden Order, the dominant belief system of the lands between, fascinated the young prodigy. This system governed the laws of existence itself. It described how the world functioned, how life moved, how fate unfolded. Two principles stood at the center of this philosophy: the law of causality and the law of regression. The law of causality teaches that every action sends ripples outward. One event leads to another. Each cause creates an effect, and those effects continue spreading endlessly. The law of regression teaches the opposite truth, that all things eventually return to their origin. No matter how far something travels, it will ultimately move back toward where it began. These ideas shaped the understanding of the Golden Order, and the young Empyrean studied them carefully. Even in childhood, Miquella created powerful incantations, sacred spells of radiant gold. Many of these incantations were crafted in honor of Raydegan, golden rings of light, symbols of divine knowledge. It It seems that Radegan held some affection for the young child, perhaps even pride. But despite all this brilliance, the Golden Order had one terrible weakness. It could not cure the scarlet rot. The corruption that consumed Melania came from a power older than the Golden Order itself, a distant outer god whose influence reached into the world from beyond. No prayer, no love, no sacred incantation could remove its curse. For Miquella, this realization changed everything, because the young Empyrean loved the twin sister deeply. The warrior known as Melania, Blade of Miquella, dedicated her entire life to protecting her brother. But Miquella wanted to do something far greater. The child wanted to save her, and so the Empyrean began searching for another solution, something beyond the teachings of the Golden Order, something entirely new. That search led to the discovery of unalloyed gold. Most metals used in weapons or armor are alloys, mixtures of different elements that strengthen the material. But mixtures also introduce impurities. Unalloyed gold is different, pure, untouched, and Miquella discovered that this purity possessed an extraordinary property. It could resist the influence of outer gods. Using this metal, the young Empyrean created delicate golden needles, small objects with incredible power. When placed within the body, these needles could slow the spread of divine corruption. They could resist the rot, ease suffering, perhaps even stop the influence of the distant god that controlled the disease. For the first time, hope appeared. Hope that Melania might one day be free from her curse. But the ambitions of Miquella stretched even further than that. The Empyrean did not simply want to heal one person. The child wanted to build a better world, a place where the broken and rejected could live without fear. And so a new vision began to take shape. Far to the north, in lands of cold wind and pale sky, a sacred tree was planted. This tree would become known as the Halleck tree. Unlike the Erd tree, which stood at the center of the Golden Order's power, the Halleck tree grew far from that influence. It was meant to be something new, something independent, something gentler. To nourish the young tree, Miquella offered something incredibly rare: divine blood, the blood of an Empyrean. Slowly, the Halleck tree began to grow, its pale branches stretching toward the sky, and word of this new sanctuary began to spread. Across the lands between, those rejected by the Golden Order began to travel north. Creatures the world had abandoned, albinorics, misbegotten, exiles, outcasts, all of them believed the Halleck tree might offer something the rest of the world denied them: a home, a refuge, a place of acceptance. For a brief moment in history, hope gathered beneath the pale branches of that distant tree. But the mystery surrounding Miquella does not end there, because whispers soon began to spread of another figure, a quiet saint who appeared only in dreams, a being known as Saint Trina. The stories about Saint Trina are strange. No one agrees on exactly who the saint is. Descriptions change depending on who is speaking. Some claim Saint Trina is a young girl, pale and quiet, surrounded by drifting purple flowers. Others describe a soft-spoken boy wandering through twilight fields of dream. The accounts rarely match, but every story shares one constant detail. Where Saint Trina appears, sleep follows. Not the heavy darkness of death, not the restless sleep of nightmares, but something softer, a calm, gentle rest that quiets the mind. Travelers sometimes awaken from these dreams, feeling strangely comforted, as if someone had been watching over them, guiding them carefully through the night. In certain places throughout the lands between, strange purple flowers can be found growing in clusters. These flowers are often called Trina's lilies. Their petals release a faint powder when disturbed, and those who breathe the drifting dust often feel their eyelids grow heavy. Sleep arrives quickly, almost peacefully, because of this unusual effect. Many believe the saint carries power over dreams themselves, a mysterious influence that moves quietly through the sleeping world. But the greatest mystery surrounding Saint Trina is the possibility that the saint and Miquella are the same being. Some scholars believe that when the Empyrean sleeps, the spirit wanders freely through dreams. A second identity, a dream self, moving through the quiet minds of the world. If that theory is true, then the child who could never grow might possess an unusual freedom, while the body remains trapped in eternal youth. The mind could roam endlessly through the realm of dreams, a gentle guardian of sleep. Yet even as these quiet mysteries spread across the lands between, darker forces were beginning to move. Far beneath the surface of the world, hidden from the Erdtree's light, another demigod was awakening, a being shaped by bitterness, exile, and ancient resentment. This figure would eventually become known as Mohg, Lord of Blood. Mohg was born with the curse of the omen. Omens were feared within the society of the lands between. Their bodies bore twisted horns, signs believed to mark them as touched by chaos. Many omens were hidden away beneath the royal capital, locked in dark prisons where the outside world would never see them. Mohg spent years in those underground chambers, years of silence, years of resentment. But in the darkness, he encountered something strange. A voice, not a voice from the lands between, but from somewhere far beyond. An outer god, a being known as the Formless Mother. This distant god offered Mohg power, blood magic, strength that no prison could contain. But such power always carries a price. Mohg accepted the bargain. Over time, he gathered followers who believed in his vision, devoted servants drawn to the promise of forbidden power. Together, they created a hidden cult, a strange kingdom deep beneath the earth. This place would later become known as Mohgwyn Palace. But Mohg did not simply seek power. He believed he had a destiny, a dream of founding a new divine dynasty. And to begin a dynasty, one requires a god. Yet Moog himself was not chosen by the greater will. He was not an Empyrean. He could not ascend to godhood alone. He needed someone divine to stand beside him, someone capable of becoming a god. And in all the lands between, only a few beings possessed that potential. One of them was the young dreamer within the Halleck tree, the Empyrean Miquella. At some point, the child had entered a deep sleep within the Halleck tree. The body rested inside a large cocoon. A strange transformation seemed to be taking place. Some believe Miquella intended to shed the curse of eternal childhood. Perhaps the cocoon was meant to allow the Empyrean to grow at last, to emerge reborn, older, stronger, free. But the transformation was never completed, because one night Moog arrived. Through hidden passages and secret tunnels, the Lord of Blood infiltrated the sacred Halleck tree, past the guardians, past the followers who believed their sanctuary was safe. Deep within the tree's heart, Moog found the cocoon. Inside the pale shell rested the sleeping Empyrean, silent, unmoving. Without hesitation, Moog stole the cocoon. He carried it away into the darkness beneath the world, back to his crimson palace. There, surrounded by blood rituals and devoted followers, Moog began preparing for the birth of his dynasty. The plan was simple. He would awaken the Empyrean, raise Miquella as a god, and together they would rule. But the cocoon never opened. Moog attempted ritual after ritual. Blood sacrifices were offered. Ancient incantations were whispered through the palace halls. Still nothing happened. The sleeping Empyrean remained silent. No movement, no response, almost as if the mind inside the cocoon had withdrawn somewhere beyond reach. Some believe the transformation simply failed, that the young Empyrean remains trapped forever within that cocoon. But others believe something far stranger occurred. They believe the spirit of Miquella had already departed, leaving the body behind, continuing to wander the dream world as Saint Trina. If that theory is true, then Moog may have stolen nothing more than an empty vessel, and somewhere within the quiet realm of dreams, the true mind of the Empyrean continues to drift, still dreaming, still searching for a better future. Even now, the mysteries remain unresolved. The Halleck tree still stands in the distant north, though scarred and twisted by war. Its pale branches remain. Followers still linger among its roots, waiting, believing that one day their gentle lord will return. And deep beneath the earth, in the palace of blood, the cocoon remains, silent, unchanged, a pale shell holding a sleeping god, or perhaps an empty one. In many ways, the story of Miquella is a story about kindness in a world that rarely rewards it. The lands between are filled with warriors, conquerors, and rulers who sought power above all else. Many demigods fought terrible wars to claim their place in history, but Miquella dreamed of something different. Instead of conquest, the young Empyrean imagined a sanctuary, a place where the broken could live without fear. The Halig tree was meant to be that place, a second great tree, but one not bound to the strict laws of the Golden Order, where the tree represented authority, hierarchy, and divine control. The Halig tree represented something quieter: acceptance, mercy, possibility. Creatures who were rejected elsewhere gathered beneath its branches. Albinorics, who were considered artificial beings, misbegotten, whose twisted bodies made them targets of cruelty. Even wandering knights who had lost their purpose found their way there. For a short time, the Halig tree became a symbol of hope. But hope is fragile in the lands between. The tree itself never reached the same strength as the tree. Its growth was slow, imperfect, almost as if something in the world resisted its existence. Some scholars believe this failure was tied to Miquella's curse, because the Empyrean could never grow. Perhaps the Halig tree could never fully mature either. Both remained incomplete, both trapped in an unfinished state. Yet the dream still endured, even after the cocoon was stolen, even after Miquella vanished. Followers continued to protect the Halig tree. They believed the young lord would return one day, and at the center of this devotion stood the greatest warrior of the Halig tree, the twin sister, the undefeated blade, Melania, blade of Miquella. Few figures in the lands between are as feared as Melania. Despite the curse of scarlet wrought slowly consuming her body, she remained an unmatched warrior. Her skill with the blade became legendary. Entire armies feared facing her in battle. Yet her strength was never used for conquest. Every action she took was devoted to one purpose: protecting Miquella. Even her title reflects this loyalty. Not Melania the conqueror, not Melania the queen, but Melania, blade of Miquella. Her identity was bound entirely to the young Empyrean, and when Miquella disappeared, the warrior remained, guarding the Halig tree, waiting, perhaps hoping that one day the dream would continue. But the fate of the lands between did not wait for dreams. War eventually erupted among the demigods, a conflict known as the Shattering. Each demigod fought to claim fragments of the Elden Ring. Power became the only language left in the world. And during this time, Melania marched south to face another powerful demigod, a warrior whose strength rivaled her own, Starscourge Radon. Their battle would become one of the most devastating conflicts in the history of the lands between. The clash between Melania and Radon shook entire regions. Both warriors possessed incredible power. Both refused to fall. But as the battle dragged on, the rot within Melania reached a breaking point. In a moment of desperation, the scarlet bloom finally opened. A terrible flower of rot erupted across the battlefield. The land itself became poisoned, and the once great region of Caelid was transformed into a scarred wasteland. Even Radon, one of the mightiest warriors alive, was driven into madness by the spreading rot. After that terrible moment, Melania was carried back to the Haligtree, still alive, still waiting, still loyal to the brother who might never return. And so the strange mystery continues. In one distant corner of the lands between, the Haligtree stands silent beneath pale skies. In another hidden place, far below the earth, a cocoon rests within the crimson halls of Mogwin Palace. Inside that cocoon lies the sleeping form of Miquella, or perhaps only an empty shell. Because if the stories about Saint Trina are true, then the true mind of the Empyrean may never have been captured at all. It may still drift quietly through dreams, walking softly across the sleeping thoughts of the world, perhaps watching, perhaps waiting, perhaps still searching for a way to heal the broken land. In the end, Miquella represents something rare in the history of the lands between. Not power, not domination, but compassion, a dream that the world could become kinder, that the rejected could find a home, that curses might one day be lifted. Whether that dream will ever awaken again remains unknown. But somewhere, in the quiet spaces between sleep and waking, the gentle Empyrean may still be dreaming, and perhaps one day the dream will return. Until then, the lands between rest beneath distant stars. The Haligtree stands silent, the cocoon remains closed, and somewhere within the quiet darkness of dreams, the child of unalloyed gold continues to sleep, peacefully, patiently, waiting